Okay, welcome to a new lesson. I'm excited for this one. We're going to get into creating all the pyrotechnics, the explosions. It's definitely going to be really awesome. I think there's nothing more satisfying than getting to blow stuff up. So I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback about the VFX bootcamp, and I'm really excited for this because I think it's a chance for us to really have a laser-focused approach to getting results fast, as well as really focusing exclusively on the 10 pillars of effects that we really need to know inside and out to land a job in any high-end visual effects studio. So if you haven't got an email about it yet, then keep an eye out at the bottom of the email I sent. I'll make sure to include a link to the VFX bootcamp. I want to give everyone an opportunity to check it out first, just so that way you can see if it's right for you. I'm pretty sure that registration is going to fill up pretty quickly, so I want to give you as much time to make up your mind if it's something that you might be interested in doing. So I'm excited for this lesson. We're going to be doing a lot, and there's so much that I want to cover, and it's really hard to kind of compress this all into just one lesson, but we'll definitely be doing a lot of really cool stuff. So I'm going to be combining all of the effects that we've done so far into this. So all the destruction has been driving, the dust and now the pyro, all of this is going to start to come together very quickly. And then from here we're going to get into doing all the shaders, the lighting, all the secondary effects, and we're going to continue to build our shot up until we can take it through to final, which is really critical to be able to then showcase a full production visual effects shot. So let's get started. Hi, this is Alan Mackay, and in the past couple of videos we have covered a lot. So we've been going through everything from initially setting up a procedural workflow, thinking ahead and carefully building a very intuitive setup for what we need to do, as well as then looking at building a lot of laser effects and procedural beam effects that trigger a lot of the destruction, plugging that all in so that way we have destructive effects being triggered by that, going on and on and on, doing the atmospheric dust, everything else. It's been so awesome. At the same time, it's been so great to get all this positive feedback from all of you. I'm really surprised at how many people have signed up for this and how many people are participating. Already I'm getting so much great feedback in terms of the live action series. There's been a lot of people signing up, and it is filling up quick, which is great. I can't wait to get started with this. At the same time, I wanted us to have a moment to breathe, and so obviously there's been a lot of people on Facebook and forums going like, what the hell, these are 3-hour videos? It's been really cool to put as much into this as I can, and at the same time I wanted to make these a little bit shorter and take a moment to step back and focus on something which I think all of us are going to find to be really, really fun, which is pyro. So doing explosions, fire, stuff like that. So this is something where also I've had a lot of people emailing me already showing off what they've been doing in Maya and what they've been doing in Houdini, which has been really cool to actually see a lot of this being replicated. And that's what I love about a lot of what we're doing, is it's very cross-platform. You can take the concepts that you're doing here and apply them inside of Houdini using pyro effects. You can literally jump into Maya and use Fume Effects from Maya. It's identical to Max, and for me, like when Fume Effects was first in alpha for Maya, I literally just opened it up and started working with it. I didn't need to learn it because what we're doing right here is exactly the same in both packages. And either way, like whatever we're doing, a lot of it is always the same approach, maybe a few little different dials, but it's all the same sort of thing. So that's been really cool to see so many people taking what we're doing in this training and applying it in other packages. And I've seen a lot of that in the live action series where people are literally doing the entire course in other packages, which is freaking awesome. I love it. I love that we have that sort of community. And so at this point, I want to dive into this and really start to do some cool stuff with fire, pyrotechnics. Keep in mind, we got to destroy all the other buildings still. We got to do all the lighting, the rendering, and everything else, the integration, and that's what we'll be doing after this video as well. So there's a lot going on here. I'm in a race right now because I'm flying to Canada tomorrow, and I'm trying to get as many videos out as I can, and I guarantee I'm not going to make it, but I'm going to do my best. Pulling an all-nighter tonight. So this video I want you to enjoy. Let's get started. Alright, so it's time to dive into some pyrotechnics. We're going to look at generating fire, we're going to look at generating explosions, we're going to do a lot of cool stuff. Keep in mind that one thing I'll say about this is I didn't ever intend to do any fire, just like I didn't intend to do all of this destruction either, but I don't want this to be a big pyrotechnics video. I don't want this to be all about like massive explosions and making it really epic. I do like the idea of having dust and a lot of elements like that, and when we do build up all of the buildings, all of these dust elements are going to be, I feel like, a very hero element. The fire, I don't want to be. I don't want this to be just this massive, ridiculous Michael Bay kind of thing. So we are going to create fire, we are going to create smoke and everything else, but just keep in mind, I'm not going to make this go over the top. I want this to look cool without being too crazy. So I'm just hiding my thick dust elements, and let's just quickly make sure our render is active. I'm going to create another fume grid. And right now, I don't need to cover the whole thing. I just need a bit of room to work, basically. So foreground, something like that is cool. Like later on we worry about dimensions. Right now, I don't care if there's cropping or clipping, anything like that. Okay, so with that active, I'm just going to call this Explo 001. I'm going to make this a dash. Now I'm going to make the other group active, because that's where we're dumping all of our stuff. Hopefully that makes sense why we're doing that. We're dumping all of our crap in here. So if there was a lighting artist or someone needs to jump into our file, it would make sense right away. They'd know they could easily just jump in, and the render ones, any of these layers, would have everything in here. So I'm just going to create a particle source. I want to create two. Vfx E, and then we'll call this smoke. Vfx E, and we'll call this fire. Sorry, I'm totally naming these wrong. Explo fire. Explo smoke. And the other one we should have done earlier, Vfx E dust. Now, we don't need to worry about this stuff yet. I just want to get that out of the way so it's all built. And let's dive into our TP, our thinking particles, and same deal as before. I'm going to go into atmospherics, and let's just create a new group. I'm going to call this Explo, and we'll just create two groups in here, I think. I pretty much just want to have Explo fire, and then we'll also have another one, Explo smoke. And under atmospherics, same deal, Explo, and I'm going to have create and have attach. Just waiting for this autosave. Come on. Attach and forces. I think this is all I'll really need. Basically, I just want to bring in the basic geometry. Whoops, sorry, there should be like VB1. And so that's all the green broken geo here. I'm going to get this, very similar to how we did the dust, and I want to generate fire. I'm also going to generate smoke. Now, what I'd like to do, we'll put smoke up here. What I'd like to do is kind of tricky. Initially, I want to get the surface. So I'm going to say surface position, plug that into both of these, get the particle shape from here. Again, stuff that we've done. I'm going to go face ID. Now, I'm happy to envelop the entire geo, so that's okay with me as well. I was trying to think. Now, I mainly want this to happen just for a couple of frames For some reason, I don't know why, but my particle age has been a bit fishy. Just as a precaution, I'm kind of like going crazy on egg timers right now. But all I want to do is I want to trigger this so that way, while it's running, it's going to be executing fire. So same deal, essentially. It's a way that I can have 5 frames where fire will burst out of these things. So I'll put this in fire, and I'll put this one in smoke. Now, the only other tricky thing is that I want to control what gets created. I want this to be based on size and a few other things. So I'm going to do an and the and is what triggers the start, okay, instead. So we say the particle goes here, so it knows what's up, but the start is going to be based on 2 thresholds, okay? So one's going to be vel, the other one's going to be, size. So we need to output the size and the velocity wherever you are hiding. Alright, so velocity, size, again, stuff that we've done. Linking these up, the velocity is going to be about, 55, 60, and I'll make like 12 for the size. And this way what's going to happen is only the big chunks are going to, get the catch on. So I'll put the smoke to activate, same deal. Sorry, so that way it's on running, okay? So what happens is we're just going to get like big chunks to actually generate stuff, because otherwise there's just going to be too much of this. So I only want specific pieces that break to actually generate anything, okay? So let's just take a look again. I just have the geometry here, and if the pieces are big, like 12, which is twice the size of the dust, if they're moving relatively big, anything faster than like 55 roughly, then we start this timer which says, alright, I'm going to spit out just once 5 frames of information saying be on for 5 frames. And it's going to be based on the position around the shape of the object. And so with the fire and the smoke, let's say smoke, I'm going to say pistol shot per call, and we'll do 4. Okay, so we're going to emit lots of smoke, and it's going to live for 12 frames, which, it's not bad. I'm going to vary this a little bit. In terms of speed, things like that, I don't care as much. In fact, I think this is really relevant, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to attach these particles, so the speed isn't relevant at all, to the geometry. Okay, so as these pieces fling out, the smoke is actually going to be attached to it, so it's going to emit from the surface, which I think will be pretty cool. So to do that, I'm going to do a set ref, and this set ref is a way to set the information or create a relationship between the smoke being created, the smoke particles being created, and the original shape. On top of that, I won't get into this too much, but because I don't think we'll actually use it, but just in case, I want to output time information as well. Alright, so the main thing is that we're going to create a relationship between the new particles being created and the previous shape. So we can go in here, and I can do a get ref, and we can pull in that smoke. So what's this? Explode smoke. So we can pull in the smoke, link this up, and then we do a p attach. And we'd say reference this from here. And we say to me. So all we're doing is we're basically saying attach the particles from, or the new particles to the old ones. So you're getting it from here, attaching to there, or sending the information to there. So that way, what happens is these particles are going to be locked to the surface. Okay. So if I go back now, in fact, let me just turn off the fire just so it's not confusing. The new particles being created are now being attached. So wherever the geometry goes, these particles are attached to it, which is cool, because if you imagine they're creating smoke wherever those pieces go, they're going to be having smoke attached, created from those particles. So the one thing I want to do though is, if these particles die at all, or break, or whatever, it's those particles don't know what to do with themselves. So at least for me, this is something I've always done. I haven't seen anyone else really do it, but I just set this up where I can invert the reference. Oh, sorry, invert the, I think the number of particles. I could have this wrong, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure I referenced the number of particles. And that will allow, like when these particles die, if it, let's just say that this isn't working, then do it to the reference particles, but I think it's the number. But basically this will allow it so that way if the particles do die or break more, then the attached particles will die as well. Okay, so I went through it kind of quickly, but we're just attaching particles to this. The other thing I want to do is I just want to create some fire. And the fire is going to be a lot simpler. It's just emitting from the surface based on those attributes. I want to do lots of particles. I don't want to make them live very long. Okay, so 4 frames is fine. I do want them to emit really fast because these are going to be bursting off really quick. So we're just going to vary that a lot. Directionality, let's just make that crazy as well. So this is the general settings. 75, so they're pretty diverse. It's almost radial. They're just exploding out. Very fast, very random, not living very long. And the other thing I just need to do is just give this some forces. So this is just going to be for the fire, so say explode fire, because the other ones are attached. I'm going to do standard force. Really picking up the pace here. So make this about 3 times as turbulent, because again, it's going to be reacting pretty crazy. And I don't know, like, what do we want to do here? I think just the big turbulence would be fine, because these are going to move pretty quick. So these particles are moving really quick. Okay, they're not color coded or anything. If we want to do this, I can make this like orange drops, and then smoke we can make darker gray dots. And you get the general idea. So this is what's going on now. These pieces, as they fall and they move around, they're going to be generating stuff. Now, the final thing I might do, we have it starting at 160. I wouldn't mind it being like 165, something like that. I don't know. If I wanted to do something like this, I would simply do a time interval and say 165 to 350, whatever. You know, we're just basically going to say that that way the particles come down and then they turn on about here. Okay, I think that makes a bit more sense. Okay, so I went through it kind of quick, but that would be the general particle setup. The fluids are going to be a bit more interesting. So just wait for this to save. Okay, so jumping in the fume. Let's do the smoke first, just because I figure that will be the most straightforward. I'm just going to set this to like 1.2 and make it shrink over time, so that way they're just going to fizzle out. I want to make them not have much of a velocity multiplier. The dust shot forward, these are going to trail behind. Okay, I think that's pretty much all. Like, I don't want these to be very thick, so we'll set 0.75. Like I said, I don't want like a big thick pyroclastic thing. So, you know, now just adding particles. Let's just drop in smoke, jumping the fire. And by the way, just to show really quick, you can see the particles being emitted. You know, there's not that many. It just depends on where they're being created. Maybe I can jump forward a little bit, but the whole idea is that, you know, the pieces here are going to have particles attached, and we can play with this. We could definitely say, you know, generate more smoke. So the threshold, you know, it's up to us what you want to do. You could bring that down a little bit. You could say anything moving slower. whatever you wanted to do. I'm going to leave this up to you. I don't want you to be like, okay, what did Alan put in? Do whatever is based on yours, because yours will, no matter how closely you try and match mine, it will end up being slightly different. Just because it's different positions, maybe slightly different values, whatever. Whole point is that we're generating these particles on everything. Okay, so if you want this to be more explosive, I would suggest just playing with your thresholds, and that's going to trigger everything. Okay, so I'm going to keep this like 11.5, I don't know, something like that. Okay, so 165, they all turn on, and that's kind of what we're getting there. So that's cool. I'm happy with that. Oops. Thanks, Jeff. So I know I have a few things popping up. This is my personal machine. Alright, so that's all set up. That's cool. Now, let's do the fire. So what I want to do is, same deal, I'm going to keep this relatively small, and I'm going to make this shrink as well. So it's kind of similar to what we did with the smoke. But I'm going to set the velocity multiplier really high, but over time it's going to die back. So it's only on the initial burst, it's going to hit hard, and then it's going to die out. And we can also click the curve here, and we can say, alright, like stay pretty intense quickly. Oh, sorry, other way around. Stay pretty intense, and then, you know, you can die out. Alright. I don't know, that's kind of it. I don't want to create any smoke for this. Let's do a quick sim. Let's just take a look. But from here, give it a bit more res. You know, most of what we're going to be doing is going to be in the sim tab. Okay. So I've gone through this kind of quick, but all we did is attach particles to the debris, and then we created the fire as well. So the smoke's attached. We created the fire as well. I'm going to move this up a bit because that's pretty much where most of it's going to be happening. Okay, so this looked pretty wimpy. So it's a start though. By the way, just make sure you set your offset to 160. So let's throw in a few things here just to kind of make this a little bit more interesting. First of all, resolution, let's go up at least to there. I'm also going to set the max simulations, but we'll set the CFL, kind of similar to before. 3 frames though. 2.5, so it's going to be very reactive. Okay, I want this to react much faster. Going to give it a little bit of turbulence, 0.1 scale. 3, because I want this to burn and fizzle very quickly. Detail 5. I'm putting this out really quick, but the main thing is going to be the expansion. I'm going to set the expansion to 3, but my burn rate to 0.1, which is ridiculously low, and 1 variation. So I'm just going to hit sim really quick and let this go, and then, oops, let me turn my system back on, and then I'll explain what the heck I'm doing. So timescale 2.5. I'm doing this at 2.5 so that way it's much faster to react, and this way it can keep up, because these things are happening very, very quick. So because of that, it needs to be able to burn and react a lot quicker as well. Let me change my color to black. On top of this, I'm giving a little bit of turbulence, small scale, but very fast moving. Okay, that's really critical. It's going to be very quickly burning like fire, not like, you know, not like slow moving like smoke or anything. You know, so just a bit of turbulence, nothing crazy. The biggest thing is that I've set my expansion really high, but it's actually still quite tenderly, and the reason is because the burn rate's really low. So here's the thing, the lower the burn rate, or let's say, yeah, the lower the burn rate, the less it's going to burn the fuel, okay? So if the expansion is really high, it means it's going to burn through fuel really, like, much quicker, but then if the burn rate is low, it's not going to be able to burn through as much, so it'll expand, but it won't burn as much, so it doesn't explode. So between the burn rate and the expansion, the two play together quite well. You could have a high burn rate, so that way it'll make it burn quicker, therefore combust quicker. But if you you know, have the expansion low, then it won't do that. And so these two kind of play a game together, where if I bring the expansion up, well, let's say if I bring the burn rate down, it's going to burn slower, so the flames will live longer. But then to compensate that, I'll bring the expansion up, and that will make it more explosive again. So here we're getting a kind of quick burst, which is just something to start with, but I think we need to play with the particle count to get this to be a bit more explosive. So I think just to get this going, I might actually set this to 160. Let's just start it there so that way it's like automatically on fire at the very beginning. But I think the main thing is that this grid just isn't really where the action is. So let's move it into the center, make it a bit bigger. But I think that like by being here, this is going to be way more explosive. So I think it's just I'm only getting a little taste of it. So let's run this again. Alright, so this is what we're doing with so far. So we're getting there. I mean, it's a bit more intense, it's a bit more cool. Definitely things still to do. So first of all, let's go back into Sim. Like right now it feels a little bit tenderly. I'm gonna make it, yeah, it feels a little bit tenderly and more kind of like a gas fire, not really like an intense explosion. And so I'm gonna make it vorticity 2. Actually, you know what, I'm not gonna worry about vorticity. Let's skip vorticity and let's just dive right into the burning process. I'm going to use oxygen. Oxygen tends to be more combustible, so it just kind of bursts a lot better. I'm going to do a few things. We got oxygen diffusion. I'm going to make that like 0.09. It will just kind of like soften the diffusion out a bit. Let's make expansion for heat production 100. And you know, all we're doing is we're going to make it expand more because I felt like it wasn't blowing up as much. Heat production, we're going to make it produce more heat. Okay, this means it will rise up quicker, stuff like that, it'll burn. I don't know, I think that those are the main things. Like, there's another thing that I think is really critical is let's put smoke density and make this like 1.5. So what will happen is when fuel burns out, it's actually going to turn to smoke. So that's going to create more smoke, which is going to fill this out. Because right now I felt like this was a little too wimpy. Okay, so now it's going to be more explosive, it's going to fill out more. A lot of stuff like that. I don't know. I think that's pretty much like what I'm thinking. I mean, we got good turbulence. We got a lot of good stuff going on here. Let's just take a look at fire again. 0.75. I mean, so yeah, they're pretty tiny, but they're explosive. They're shooting out really fast. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, I think this is going to be fine. So I'm going to take a look at the particles one last time. I just want to double check that we got fire. Can't really see the smoke too well. Alright, so I mean there's a fair amount of stuff going on here. So I don't mind it. I might run the sim again. And we'll just see how this turns out. So, just looking through this really quick. Yeah, so I think this should be fine. I'm going to get my grid. I'm just going to move it back a tiny bit just so we get like most of the particles in there. I just want to really see this in action. Okay, so I'll run the sim one last time. I think now with the expansion being higher, oxygen being in there, what else did we do? Sorry, I'm just trying to think out loud. Yes, I mean, we upped the expansion. Heat production doesn't really matter that much. Oxygen, though. Oh, yeah, so doing the smoke emission, that's going to be cool. It's just going to fill things out more, so it's just going to feel bigger overall, rather than just relying on fire. Because fire by itself is kind of boring. Because fire is a light source, but it also means that it doesn't have any shadow, so therefore you don't get any depth to it, and so it just kind of comes out looking a bit dull. Alright, so we'll run this and we'll check it out. Oh, one last thing before I forget. Let's set temperature as an output channel. Okay, so just go General, Exporting Channels, Set, and do Temperature, because we're going to eventually use the temperature channel as well. So the cool thing is that technically both fire and smoke are creating fuel. That was a bit of an accident, but it works. I mean, like, I don't mind having additional fuel being created on those pieces that are moving. So this is cool. It's a bit different, but it's cool. Like, I don't mind the effect overall. Now, like I said, I'm going to save all the lighting, the rendering stuff till later, but let's just set up a basic shader for now. So I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit, like any frame really. And I'm just going to go to the rendering. Let's change the fire shader to actually be the black body shader. The black body shader essentially uses the temperature, which is why we output the temperature shell earlier on. So if we go back here, we have temperature. So as long as we output that, we got this thing here. Now, what I want to do is let's keep the fire the same, but we will set the linear bias down, and that's just going to shift it either higher or lower. The main thing is going to be, let's just set the minimum and maximum thresholds for this the fire. So based on the temperature, it's going to choose like you know, how low it's going to consider the temperatures, so we can kind of like bring it back a little bit. So 1400 I feel is pretty good. The big one's going to be to set the fire smoke blend to 1000. I always do that because it just gives it a nicer range. And then finally the opacity. So going through is kind of quick, but for me basically it comes down to a few things. First of all, I'm going to crank my smoke. I'll come back in a second and explain this stuff a bit more, but the color, I'm going to just make this a darker smoke color. And let's just go where it's a bit more hot. Okay, so the way that this is going to work for me is that I want to initially, you know, set up the minimum and maximum temperatures. So the lower the temperature, the more it's going to consider. Okay, so if you want to really blow it out, we can. But like I said, I was going for more subtlety here. So I don't mind doing that. Let's say that I wanted to still make this more intense with those coloring. So that can control the threshold, but let's just say I want to make it brighter. All I need to do is set the temp scale, and that's gonna still consider the threshold. There's 5, 7, 10, but it's going to multiply everything. So just start looking at this stuff as like, what does it do? Okay, so the intensity is the intensity. It's essentially going to be how, I was going to say intense again, but it really is how bright things are going to be. Okay, so typically, you know, you can keep that relatively low. I'm going to keep it 0.6. The temp scale though is a multiplier, so it's going to get everything and it's going to multiply it. Okay, so keeping it 10 is a good range. The blend is just literally that. Like if you pull it back, it's just going to be the fire and then the smoke. But sometimes we are like, oh, everything's great, I just want to push the fire inside of the smoke more. This is what you can do. The opacity is the density basically. So intensity will like blow things out. It'll get a lot more intense. It's more exponential. It's more of a bell curve. But with this, it's going to be more the density. So you could have like a low level effect, but very dense, so it doesn't blow out too much. It's more just going to be, you know, more opaque overall. Whereas I don't mind intense, but I want this to actually fade back in a lot. So that kind of range will work really well for that. And then finally, you got the opacity of the smoke at 4, which just means that it's going to be a lot more opaque, obviously, so it's going to fill out more. And when we see it with shadows and stuff, it'll show up a lot more. But that's the gist of what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to get some basic fire. I'm not trying to do like over the top thick pyrotechnics this time around. I just want like flames, you know what I mean? Okay, so here's just a bunch of examples of the fire. I ran a couple of previews. This is just basically it on green with also the dust in there as well, just to give a good idea. Now, obviously, we can make this way more pyroclastic. Like I said, I didn't want this to be a big explosion, but if you want it to be, up your expansion just a little bit on the fire, as well as make the opacity in the shader for the fire and for the dust way more opaque. And that instantly will give it more of a big explosive feel. But in general, I'm happy with the kind of scale and feel of it all. So I think this is working out pretty well. Cool. So at this point, like we've built the fire. That was the other element I wanted to do. There are a few small elements that just time-wise we'll see if we get to. But right now we're going to move on to actually doing the lighting, the rendering, the making all of our CG integrate into the shot a lot more realistically. So that's going to be in the next lesson. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this lesson, and we have so much more to do, but we've only got a couple of lessons left to do it all in. So there's going to be a lot that we're going to be going through rapid fire, and I'm really excited to see what you can do with this. So again, if you haven't been, feel free to post anything on Instagram or Facebook, wherever you want. I'd love to see your progress updates as you go, so tag me in those posts and I'll be able to post some encouraging words or feedback, whatever you need. But I love seeing this stuff. It's so awesome to see your progress as you go through this. So like I said, next lesson, we're going to continue our journey into building secondary effects and doing a lot more with this. So I'm going to try and get the next lesson out as quick as I can. I've actually got to fly to Canada in a couple hours time, so I'm going to be working really hard to try and finish this training before I fly out. Otherwise, it'll be another day or two. We're going to get all of this done while I'm also working on set. So fingers crossed I can get this all done in time. But in the meantime, stick with this training. Like I said, it's very easy to drop off, and I condone you for being able to stick with the training and stay consistent. This is how you get results. Visual effects is a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end. I've had so much satisfaction the first time I ever got to see my work on the big screen, and it's always fun to get to see all the hard work from you and everyone else that you worked with as a team paid off in the end when you get to see all of it on the big screen and see it really come together. So hopefully this is something that you continue with and you're able to really level up your visual effects career. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get to work together. I think that would be fun, because I get emails all the time from students of mine who've gone through my training and then gone on to, like I said, ILM, Weta, MPC, Framestore, Scanline, like so many other really big studios. And I love seeing that transition, those results. So I'm gonna be back next lesson. I'm gonna try and get this video out to you as quick as I can. So keep an eye on your inbox, and I'll talk to you soon.